I'm Dan Dunkevich, and welcome to The Briefing. Today, we kick off a series on artificial intelligence by asking the question, why is it such a big deal? So to answer that, let's start at the highest level with GDP growth. Now, GDP is, of course, the broadest measure of a nation's output. And in America, our GDP growth rate has swelled to over 4% in recent quarters. Now, estimates are that without AI's influence, it would have been under 3%. 2025 GDP in America was about $30 trillion, a little less, which means AI's input was around $300 to $500 billion. Now, for a technology that's only 3 years old, that's pretty astonishing. Now, the technology is older than that in terms of when it got built, but I'm using the release of ChatGPT as like the iPhone moment where blammo, all of a sudden AI hit the stage. Now, most of this $300 to $500 billion was spent on building the hardware and the data centers. So that's all the racks and all the buildings and all the power supplies and all the distribution and networking and all of that kind of stuff. It's estimated in 2026, global spending on AI will reach $2 trillion. So clearly, it's the biggest news in business and in technology. But this leaves the next question of, why is it worth a $2 trillion spend globally? Well, the answer to that lies in the term productivity. Now, over the past 100 years in the United States, productivity has grown from about 1.4% to about 2.8%. Some years more, some years less, and a fair bit of that having to do with what interesting technology was invented at a given time. But it averaged about 2%, maybe a little less than that. Now, gross domestic product, GDP, changed in America, usually going up, although during recessions it does go down. But the average on that was 2.5%. So a little under 2% for productivity, 2.5% for GDP growth. For this reason and others, GDP growth is really determined by your productivity growth. It's the primary driver of national growth. So that's why it would matter a great deal. So this leaves the question, what will the impact of AI be on productivity growth? Now, since it's so new, there's a lot of different opinions on this, and no one really knows. Some estimates are as little as 0.25% per year. Some are 3%. Some are higher than 3%. But if you add up the existing GDP growth or the existing productivity growth, and then you add on top of that 2, 3, 4%, you can see sustained GDP growth rates at or above 5%. Now, that's unprecedented. The only time that ever happened was briefly in the Gilded Age when we were building intercontinental railroads and the like. So this would be a very big deal. Now, a lot of people worry that this could cause inflation. You'll hear sometimes the Fed or economists talk about an economy becoming overheated. But that's really not likely to happen. The reason for that, as Milton Friedman said, inflation is always and everywhere a result of excessive government spending, particularly deficit spending. This is because when a government spends, especially when a government deficit spends, it has to create more money, so the money supply increases. But the production of the nation does not increase as quickly as the money supply increases. Now, this is largely due to the fact that governments are not as efficient users of capital as commercial interests really are. So inflation is caused by government spending. But what happens when growth is caused by productivity increases? Well, a productivity increase increases supply. So when supply increases faster than demand, you get deflation. And this has happened, as a matter of fact. During that time period in the Gilded Age, we had deflation. And so what we see here is AI productivity is going to increase significantly and will be deflationary in its very essence. And that will be a counterbalance to government's desire to continue spending more and more and more. So we may actually get to zero inflation. We might even get to negative inflation or deflation, which would be great for us. Now, people worry about deflation as a bad thing. Deflation caused by excessive production and increased efficiency is never a bad thing. Just look at it this way. 4K TVs used to cost $5,000. Now they cost $500. Was that bad? No, they didn't cause a lack of people buying TVs. They didn't cause a recession. They didn't cause a depression. So when you have a supply side deflation, that is not bad for us. And this is what AI is likely to bring. Now that's on the big broad level. Let's talk about business impact. Now the corollary to national GDP for a business, you could say, are production and sales. Now increased productivity means you get increased production, hence potential for increased sales with the existing number of humans and factories and everything else that you have. It's like reverse inflation for a business. The result here is increased profits, first and foremost. Then you'll see excess capital spending, where companies say, hey, we need more facilities, we need to grow, and we can keep the people we have and have them be able to do more because they're more productive. And then they get to say we can just hire more people because everybody we hired is worth more to us now than they used to be. And we're seeing that already. We saw the increased profits, and we can see the stock market going wild. We also can see increased capital spending, particularly on facilities in America. Now, the workforce addition has been slow. That has not gotten there yet. Well, maybe I shouldn't call it slow because this is a very new thing. But you can see that businesses are very interested in this productivity and why they would be interested in AI-based productivity gains. The result of this is that current global sales of AI services in 2025 are estimated to be over $300 billion. So that's a good bit of money right there that people are investing in their using their money to buy AI services. So that is what's behind this $2 trillion build out next year. This leads us to the question of the jobs. This is the big worry. Will AI replace me? That's very, very unlikely because each technology revolution in history has caused job displacement. But it always caused more jobs at higher wages. If you go back to the year 1900, about 50% of all Americans were involved in farming. Now it's about 1.2%. Was there a 90% layoff in farming or 99%? No, there was not. What happened was people went to work building diesel tractors and getting paid more than they were working in the fields. The same thing happened to horses and buggies. The autos replaced them. But before that happened, we had to design them, we had to build them, we had to build the factories, and we had to staff all of this long before the horse and buggy industry went away. So new, better jobs always appear before the old jobs go away. But this leads to a different question now. Is AI somehow different? Well, I'd like to point out that almost every time this has happened, people worried that, oh, this time we're going to lose jobs before we gain anything, and then has never materialized. But AI is somewhat different in that it is going faster than anything has ever happened before. And we're going to get into that as well in later episodes. But I don't think AI is going to truly be different for three reasons. The first of which is when your productivity goes up, that means a new hire is worth more now than they were a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 10 years ago. So if each new hire brings in more production, that means more sales, and you consider the idea of revenue per person will go up. So that means, wouldn't you want to have more people so you can have more revenue? There's a value in that. Second, AI will not hit everything at the same time, but the GDP impact will hit all over the place at the same time. That means some jobs get a boost and not be directly affected by AI. A good example of that is in construction. All these data centers being built, all these new factories being built, all these new things being built. Those aren't directly about AI, but it's causing increases in the skilled laborers. One interesting little factoid I heard on this one is that at one AI factory being built in Arizona, they need electricians so badly, and we're going to explain in a later episode why electricians are so important. They need electricians so badly, they're paying up to $500,000 per year for master electricians. Just think about that. That would have been inconceivable recently. So AI is not hurting jobs now. It's not likely to hurt them in the future either. Lastly, we all have this innate urge to create, to do something. Well, AI allows us, individuals, to be able to do more. So I think you're going to see more and more entrepreneurs. You're going to see more and more people stepping out and doing things, just like I'm doing here on this podcast. So let's take a look at more concrete. So in the near term, The Trump administration has negotiated trade deals that promise $20 trillion of new investment into the United States over the next half decade or so. Now let's assume a great deal of this does not actually materialize. Let's say a third of it materializes over 6 years. So that means about $1 trillion a year of new money. Now our GDP is about 30 trillion. That means that alone is like adding 3% to our GDP of money just coming in to build facilities and build things. So you have to ask the question, who's going to work in all of these factories? Who's going to build all of these factories? That's where you need the increased productivity that AI is going to bring. So I don't think that we're going to see a lack of jobs. We're going to see difficulty to fill jobs and increased wages is what we're going to see. And we're already seeing increased wages, particularly in the skilled workforce, as opposed to just the white-collar workforce, which is what we've seen in the past. I'll give you a couple more examples of this. Let's talk about a company called Hadrian. They're building automated factories that are AI native. We'll probably do an episode on them alone because they're a fascinating company. But the point is, they're hiring people who have never worked in factories before and paying them $100,000 a year, fresh, and training them using all of their AI tools. And AI is native to everything that that factory does. Another example would be the Uber CEO, who in a recent interview was talking about how many self-driving cars they're building. Now he's doing everything he can to buy as many self-driving cars as possible. But even at that, he doesn't see the possibility in any near term of those self-driving cars filling his demand for more driving. So he doesn't see a lack of drivers coming into Uber. He actually expects that that will continue to grow somewhat. And then eventually it'll level off, and then eventually probably go down. But that's not a near-term problem. That's years and years away. So right now we don't have a hiring problem. We don't have a jobs problem caused by AI. What we're going to have is finding enough people to fill the jobs. Now in the longest of term, you hear Elon say things like work will become optional because we will be so prosperous and AI and robots will be able to do almost everything for us and we can just kind of have fun and collect checks or something like that. That's possible, but I hope that's not the case because I don't think that's good for humanity. People need to do something to be fulfilled. And that gets back to that question of creativity and kind of innate drive. I think people will continue to want to do interesting things, and AI will be the tool that allows them to do more and better things. I never bet against capitalism, and I never bet against the human innate urge to grow and create. And that is the briefing for today.